To my weekday chess stream here on lichess and Twitch. I'm International Master William Paschall. We're going to start playing blitz and classical chess with any time control between 5 and 8 minutes with a 3 to 5 second increment. So everyone is welcome to challenging as long as they have at least 50 rated games on lichess or so. Had to reset the screen here for some reason, unbeknownst to me, but we're all good now. We just finished the simul yesterday. Played a 25 board simul. We lost, I think, 4 games, 4 draws. As usual, I had a couple disconnections. I try to avoid people challenging me who cannot finish the game, but it seems week after week we cannot avoid a couple of those happening. So I think I won maybe, about 15 games and lost 4 and drew 4. It was pretty tough. We had some losses at the end that were kind of dismal. So Constant Change, Mule Skinner, and we lost somebody. Super Sebi, I think, was challenging me, who played in the simul last night. We just lost him. Hopefully he'll be back. I was just running. I'm a little bit out of breath. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late here, but it is Monday and it's usually kind of tough for me to do the simul and then wake up and do the stream. But there's Super Sebi back again, who did participate in the simul. Again, if you guys want to play any time control between 5 and 8 minutes with an increment between 3 to 5 seconds, the 5-second increment games you can save for the faster time controls like 5 or 6 minutes base time. So it's Monday. We're going to get started here. Constant Change is up to 2134. He's not as strong in blitz, which I've mentioned many times. I don't understand, but he seems very fast to me. So we're white in this game. I'm going to play c4. I think yesterday, I'm playing this because yesterday in my simul, I'm not sure I played c4 really. I played a lot of knight f3 and e4 and d4, but not as many like dedicated English openings. And I think I have played against Constant Change. He plays the same repertoire against c4 as he does with colors reversed. So he tries to do basically the reverse dragon. Of course, the extra tempo should benefit me. We had an actual record turnout yesterday. Jeroen's not here yet. Skirmisher, we just started. Jeroen's not here yet. We had, I think, over 130 players viewing, or people viewing the stream last night, which is really cool. Now bishop e7, so he's varying from his usual approach. We've seen d5 pretty much universally from this opponent, and he's used 7 seconds for his first 3 moves. So time seems to be his priority. That's fine. But anyway, so knight to c3. I don't know. Bishop e7 doesn't really strike me as a very good move. It's playable. You might see a game, I think, where Alekhine played bishop e2 on the white side of the Sicilian. But obviously it's not overly critical. Transposing to an old Indian is possible here. And I don't recall Constant Change playing the old Indian, but that's what we have. It is a direct transposition, so playable. Fianchetto's setup is pretty good for white. Don't really want him to play e4 here. So one good idea is queen c2. I still have the option to either fianchetto or not. Do not exchange on e5 too early, would be my advice in general. Don't want to give up the tension in the center. But playing Constant Change is always challenging because despite my good score, he plays extremely fast and I never have time to think. You cannot think on his time, you cannot really talk about the game as much as others because he plays very, very quickly. Now he's using his time uncharacteristically. Usually he's about a minute ahead of me here. Please install Fritz pieces. Really? I like these pieces. Knight to e8. Three-dimensional would be the real question. I don't think that would, people would be able to live with that. Knight e8 here. Usually people are very one way or the other. They either hate them or love them with the three-dimensional pieces. I get used to it one way or the other. I can play with three-dimensional pieces too. I used to use them a lot to play blitz with. I actually probably prefer it, but you have to get used to it. And now I'm not. Knight e8, now taking the knight away from the center when there's tension in the center. That is not generally considered a good idea. Should not remove pieces from the center that are influencing the center when there's tension present, as there is between these two pawns here. Online Wiki, thank you for hosting. So we did have a simul last night. It was pretty successful. We had a record viewership at the Sunday simul. Had a number of tough opponents, quite a few players, over 2,000. So it wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. So queen c7, and the knight on e8 doesn't have a path to c7. It appears he wants to play f5, so we play e4 here, and I think White has a very good game. Discouraging f5 to queen on c7. Okay, that's not really a problem, but you can't have two pieces competing for the same position like on c7. And I think we are clearly better. g6. This is the only real plan Black has. I'm not sure if he wants to play f5, but that would be a little bit risky, perhaps. Bishop h6 is an automatic. I mean, he's putting his knight on g7. It's not a bad position for the knight necessarily, but the rook on f8 is pinned, so f5 still not that good for Black in this position. Seiko knits. Hello, my good sir. Yeah, go ahead and message me, Skirmisher, if you have something interesting. I'll check out Uptime. Knight g7. What to do now? Not really fearing f5, to be honest. Maybe h3 is a good prophylactic move. In the event a knight comes to f6, I don't want to come to g4 to hit my bishop on h6. It also keeps the bishop off of g4. This is just going to degenerate to a blitz game. The constant change has given me many, many very, very difficult games. See what I'm talking about with the g4 square there? It's very important. We try to break the center. This is a classic old Indian, King's Indian. Mostly, sometimes in the piers, this pawn lever with c5 can be a very good way of opening the game. But you have to time it right, and it's not always good. Once, who was it? Quang Liem did that to me in a tournament in Budapest. He just ripped me apart with this well-timed c5 in a Pierce. Maybe it was a King's Indian. I think I lost more than once against that guy. But it looks very good for White now. Started to have hallucinations. I could play knight to b5. In any case, this position looks quite promising. No tactics, apparently. But just getting the dark squared bishop is a massive positional gain for white. I don't see anything else. No knockout blows. And lastly, he has queen h5, which could be irritating. Bishop f4. We have a couple different ways to handle this. Any endgame should be very, very good for white with these two bishops and this position with imbalanced pawns, competing pawn majorities. Constant change blundered here. Uncharacteristic, he doesn't usually hang pieces. I was expecting queen h5, but then in that case I can play either g4 or queen e2 to challenge his attack on h3. Psycho Nitz says, do you have any tips for getting better at chess? I have a few tips, but they're really kind of like player specific. So it's not everybody has different needs, you know, and everyone understands different aspects of the game better than others. So I need to know a little bit more about an individual before I can really give any let's say appropriate tips for that person. If you're an absolute beginner or relatively so, I would say that the best thing to do is to combine, you know, playing and studying the game. So studying the game can be watching videos, reading books. I really don't think it's enough to just play, and it's not enough to study without playing. You have to combine the two. Mule Skinner is up next, 8-3. But I'd like more specific questions. It's a little too general, too broad, you know, about general tips. I mean, of course I have a lot of tips, but... Alright. We are going to play Mule Skinner, who likes to play a particular variation of the closed Sicilian, the Grand Prix attack. What happened last time we played d5, I don't remember. I've been working on this against him because he seemed to like closed positions better. But the last time, if I remember correctly, Mule Skinner had come up with some kind of reasonable system against d5. I don't remember exactly how the last time we played this variation went now. e6 is also possible here, but I don't play the French defense, and not really. So if you play e6 and white plays d4, you have to transpose to a form of French. Caro-Kann is more appropriate to my repertoire, and this is a Caro-Kann. So Mule Skinner, now I remember what it was. We played this before, and I played knight c6, and you played knight f3, and I played bishop g4, and you went into the very, very well-known endgame that has been known to be drawish. Although I did see a recent game in that where somebody, maybe at the European Rapid Championship, got an advantage. I think it was a game from the European World Rapid Championship in Qatar. European time zone. European Rapid Championship is not what I'm talking about. I meant to say the World Rapid Championship in Doha, Qatar, a few weeks ago. There was a game in the variation with knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4, where white did win, I think. Anyway. There's another alternative. I could play bishop e6 there. That's kind of an interesting move. Let's try that. I don't think I've ever actually played that line in practice. I know Anthony Miles used to play this, and I can recall, like it was yesterday, seeing this move in like Inside Chess or some old magazine in the late 80s with like a dubious sign, or there was a question about whether this move was good or not. it's obviously blocking the e7 pawn, but it's supporting d5 and trying to force white's hand here. So I think quite an interesting move. Guys, let me know if the stream is running well. I don't see too much chat. It's still early in the morning here, so I'm Central European time. It is 10 a.m. 19 minutes. Sometimes we get players from the West, which is cool. Oh, it's quite a bit earlier. In the US, it's 4 a.m. So I don't know if Spinal Tap, International Master Spinal Tap sometimes plays here on the stream, but 4 a.m. is pretty brutal. We have 4 challenges. Milan Kralj, Keeper Pine, Andrea Peroni, and Zen Chess. So c5 it is. Now, if I recall correctly, this doesn't seem right. I was thinking I saw the Queen d7 was a move, but that to me doesn't make 100% sense. Queen d7, bishop b5, bishop g4, knight e5, bishop takes d1. That can make sense. I could see this. I swear I thought this was the theoretical recommendation. Although, yeah, I mean the problem was if I play bishop g4 right away, white has to move queen b3, and after bishop takes f3, queen takes b7. That's the problem. Then knight takes d4, bishop b5 check, knight takes b5, queen c6 check, queen d7, queen takes a8, and I guess black is lost. If that makes sense to you guys. This is the first time I've ever played this. White responded quietly. Now it seems to me we have to change plan. The bishop's no longer well placed on e6. I have played some similar lines, but never with the direct bishop e6. 12:21 in Moscow. Keeper Pine. Will you be playing a simul today? Cormet's just on Sundays. I could even exchange on f3 unprovoked in this position. The best move looks like it should be h3 in this position, stopping bishop g4. Okay, a3. Logical. Preparing to advance his majority on the queen side. Now the question, dare I try to stop this? Probably not. Probably not. G6, B4. Got an interesting plan here, G6. Maybe I should exchange first on F3 and then play G6. There may be some problems with this g6 thing. I don't think exchanging on f3 is necessarily a problem, but I want to play g6, bishop g7. I'm just not sure if I have time for it. And the reason why I want to play g6 is because I wanted to keep this e7 square for my knight to retreat to. Otherwise, I would play bishop e7, obviously, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing. It's like an Alekhines defense plan of the knight falling back here, going to f5. Oh, g6. Maybe g6 isn't bad. There are some technical problems. You could play knight to b5, which is kind of awkward. Yeah. There's no time for g6. Oh well. It's like very similar to Alekhines defense structurally, but I don't have time to play like knight e7, knight f5. Or just I don't have a good place to retreat my knight to, basically. I don't know if I'm going to repeat this variation. I feel like black is very restricted here. Maybe I did something wrong. I feel like if you countered with e5 at the right moment, it would counter the flank pretty well. Yeah, bishop e7 is fine, but it's a little bit slow. If only I could play g6 and bishop g7, it would be, everything would be cool. Oh, rook e1. Rook e1 is a routine move, but I don't think it's really a great move. Too routine. I think he could just, you know, continue his plan on the queen side with b4 would be better. This is the other move. That's one of the other reasons why I didn't like g6 finally, because of this problem. Knight e8. Hopefully everything's protected. Now I have time to play bishop f6. Basically the same thing as playing g6. A different formation. A couple weeks, well, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, I was asking people to come up with a suggestion for what to call this type of pawn. It's not known to me what the terminology is for this. I had a suggestion by one of our viewers to call it a cliffhanger pawn. I have to break out my copy of Pawn Power and Chess by Hans Kmock to see if he actually had a label for this type of pawn. It's acting like a backward pawn, but it's not physically backward because it's not on an open file. But it is a huge liability. It's like the base of your pawns, fairly far advanced. It can't be supported by another pawn. So it practically feels like an isolated pawn in a sense. It's so vulnerable and causes white serious problems. That's the plan in Alekhines' defense for black. Attacking this pawn with bishop f6. It's uncomfortable for white. Now he has to kind of abandon his aggressive intentions temporarily. And we do have tactical possibilities on this diagonal. Well, I didn't plan on this bishop e5. I assume knight e2, but never assume anything. My knight on e8 is going to be a problem. This has got to be corrected. Probably the best move by my esteemed opponent here. I better break out. But how? Bishop takes f6. If I had time, I'd play knight takes f6. Let's see, bishop takes, let's see, knight takes, pawn takes. Bishop e7, knight e4 is just brutal. I would be spatially crushed. I don't think I have time for that. Oh, man. I have to stop, him right away. So f6 right away, apparently. This is kind of scary, but my laptop isn't plugged in. Or what? I have some kind of problem. One of my machines. It's better now. All right. Anyway, welcome everybody for joining me, and thank you for joining me. Mutiny Pawn. This was not the plan, but I was getting into a very scary situation here. So white is better. White is better. Now we have hanging pawns. He has a majority on the queen side, 3 against 2. I opted not to take with the rook. This is a little better coordination. We are running out of time. Particularly nasty situation. No real tactics for black. His bishop is good. All of his pieces are good. Rook a2 is an excellent move. And that takes some vision, you know, to see this lateral rook. That's a very masterful move. Rook a2. I don't know what Mule Skinner's rating is. We don't have any information on him whatsoever. But he does have a tendency to play better than his result would dictate. It looks like he's a beginner when you look at the 30-1 score. But I think that he's capable of playing a very good game. Maybe the time is his biggest enemy. A nasty tactic with rook takes e6. Did he have rook takes e6? It was close, but I've got d5 guarded, so it doesn't quite work. I mean, he would need to, you know, have my knight dislodged from f6 for that rook takes e6 to work. But structurally, white is better here. So it's still not so easy, but I would probably prefer white in this position. With several reasons. I mean, the queenside majority, the ability for the knight to go to b5 and d6, which is now not really on the table, but okay. And knight a5. Don't like my knight astray from the center. But he loosened his structure a little bit. This is now somewhat vulnerable. I don't want to give him a protected pass pawn, although it probably wouldn't be that clear if I play b6 and he plays c6. I'd prefer not to allow that. Poisonous pawns. Stopping rook d2. He doesn't have any tactics at the moment. This is too well overprotected. Okay, c6. He's probably gone astray here. Looks like he's having trouble keeping the position together. So I guess I'm better. Focus on this. May have a problem here. I almost lost on time myself there. Youngest queen and time pressure. Good game, Mule Skinner. Good game, man. Okay, he's not good at like very, very fast blitz, but he played really well. I think White was better the whole game until the blunder at the end. Milan Kral, as long as you've got an established rating, 31 games. Alright, I'll make an exception. I normally ask people to have like 50 games, but I didn't say anything, so it's not a simul. If it was a simul, I wouldn't let you play, because that's like usually people with the unrated accounts. I had 2 guys drop out yesterday. Also, we get a lot of people like sort of trolling me. Good morning, Mutiny Pawn. Nah, that was a very nasty game. So Milan Kral, 1700 in bullet. You better not play like a master and beat me, man. That would be kind of strange. B3. This is a little bit passive. Generally speaking, knight bd7. I think Rapport played bishop d6 against him in the infamous game where I beat him in like 27 moves. Bishop d6. Rapport played an interesting plan. At the time, it was a new idea. I think bishop d6, he was probably programmed to play that by his trainer. Bishop d6, bishop b2, queen e7 very quickly. Now I think that's become an established. That's been becoming an established plan for black. There was one strange user here on lichess I was long suspicious of, who I think was using opening book to cheat against me, and they also played bishop d6, queen e7 like Rapport. Oh, maybe bishop e2. Against this slow setup, this was probably the wrong plan. I made a mistake there. Milan Kral, well, he seems to be a bullet player. But maybe I should have played differently. d4, bishop d3, queen e2 is probably the right plan for White. But going against my better judgment, playing someone with less than 50 rated games. Chess Sucks says, you can't quit chess. The only way is to suicide. Suicide chess. Alright, so this setup with like d4 looks kind of stupid with my bishop on e2, to be honest. So I'm going to play this more like a reti. Queen c2, maybe queen b1, queen a1, as the situation dictates. I should have played d4 before I played bishop e2 and played more aggressively with bishop d3 and queen e2. The queen needs a square, like a good square to go to. I don't really like d takes c. It's not terrible for black, but not great, giving away like a good portion of your control to center. But okay, you can play this. You can play the structure, change the structure. White's slightly better when you do that, most instances. And then I have to decide whether to play d3 or d4, or even e4. I've seen Grandmaster Kojal, but you have to be really careful about e4 here, c5. Kojal will play this line with white. He's one of the better players who plays this neo-Slav. Jesus Nagiras from Cuba. These are senior players now, but they were formerly top players in the world. Not really sure what I should do, but white should be a little bit better. We could change the structure. The thing is d4 is c5 now. And then he can take on f3 whenever he wants. Probably better not to play d4 and just keep my pawn on d3. And I could have played bishop takes c4, but I didn't think that really gives me much long term. I'm a big fan. I've seen your videos for years on ICC. Chessvideos.com. Is that the Damian Lemos site? Well, I don't work for that site. They may sell our videos from chesslecture.com. But chesslecture.com is the site I make videos for. Glad to play against you the other day. Zen Chess, that's cool. My pleasure, man. I'm glad to have you. Rook on fd8. I don't want to play d4 because after c5... Okay, I can do it. It depends on the situation. If I could play d5, maybe it would be okay. If I can answer c5 with d5... I guess I'm starting to like my position in that instance. So as long as I can go here, white is probably okay. But I don't want to see d5, I mean c5 when I can't answer with d5, because I think if that's the case, then black has a good game. As long as I can play d5, the knight's a little passive on d7. He's going for this. His queen is also vulnerable to attack from knight b5. It's actually something to consider here, knight b5. His queen doesn't have very many squares. Queen c6 does probably refute it at the moment. Yeah, okay. So the center, advantageous to white, but black seems to have some kind of counterplay. I mean, this diagonal has a lot of potential. My duo of pawns, I definitely think white should be clearly better, but I have to calculate things carefully. He has some kind of dark square counterplay and blockade along this diagonal. But ultimately, the central majority, if played carefully by white here, you know, should afford me like a clear advantage. Yeah, well, yeah, knight f4. And I also don't want to see a queen. Sometimes queens will bump off that square. You see that a lot in like the Catalan. Actually, my queen was even eyeing the f5 square. So I don't want pieces coming into f4. We can just transition to a kind of fianchetto setup where my king is fairly safe. White should have a big advantage here. Tactics don't seem that clear. Knight b5, knight takes f3. Bishop takes f3. We have a good position, but nothing winning by force, I guess. Knight takes b5, queen takes... I could simply play f4 there with the rolling center. I don't know what to prefer. All the squares are guarded. He has to go back. And then I guess bishop f3 followed by e5 with what looks like a massive position for white. My majority is a little bit faster than his. The other day I had a similar game. The other day I had a similar game where black's counterplay was much faster on the queen side. It was a Grunfeld or Slav. Maybe it was a Slav. Now I can't really recall. Last week, same distribution of pawns, but black's pawns were coming down much faster, and he was actually first. And I had a good position in that game too, but it got out of control, and I was lucky not to lose. But here, the center is just too fast. What did black do wrong? Well, rook fd8. Rook fd8. I think he needs to commit. He needs to play c5 first. He should have played c5 in this position first, not allowing me to play d4. Now we have everything. The protected passed pawn on d6 should decide. So if he had played c5, none of this would have really been possible. It would have been a completely different game. It would have been a completely different game where basically it's hard for both sides to do anything. I think white would have been at least equal, but I would have had a hard time. Then if I play d4, he takes, and I have hanging pawns. Not so easy. Keeper Pine, 1682. So, I mean, black exchanged off the strong point with d takes c, and then he had to play c5. Allowing me to play d5 was just too dangerous. Even then, maybe he had a better way of reacting after I got in d5, but let the pawns get out of control. So anyway, Keeper Pine, I think he said he was in Moscow. I bet it's nice and cold, colder than here in Budapest. I think I was subscribed to chesslecture.com. This is a site that I do videos on, guys. If you don't mind spending money on a subscription, there is a massive library of videos. We have like 3,000 videos on chesslecture.com. Mostly shorter ones, like 30 minutes. Okay, knight f3. I don't like this, that, you know, you can just think indefinitely without the clock running. I haven't played knight f6 lately. I've been playing a lot of other stuff. Let's try d6. I was actually thinking of playing this in Zalakaros Open I played a few months ago. I was thinking of playing this specifically against one opponent. But g3, it's a very neutral move. I was preparing basically for somebody who played c4 in this position. I was going to play bishop g4 to get a kind of weird game, to get something original. But, you know, now g3, I think we're just going to transpose to some kind of English. Basically, it's an English. I mean, call it what you want, Sicilian. I'm playing the English with colors reversed. Interesting move there, you know, is c3, but then black plays e5, and that's recommended for black as a pretty good line. So white could go with King's Indian attack or English symmetrical. I played a lot of these. Why did the last opponent resign? It's a very monstrous passed pawn on d6 for white. It's a lost position strategically. So he felt he had no practical chance. I tend to agree with him. Although maybe in a fast game I wouldn't resign. I might, depending on my mood. I don't think his resignation was inappropriate. His positional disadvantage was so big that objectively it's probably lost. So not the worst resignation I've seen. Here, depends on what white's gonna do, I guess. I guess I should play e5. I was having a discussion with one of my students. If you guys are interested in private lessons, that's basically how I make my living. Please send me an email, videochesstrainer@gmail.com. Having a discussion with one of my students about this position. I had some training sessions with Mark Dvoretsky years ago. Passed away last year. Kind of the world's most famous chess trainer. And we discussed specifically this King's Indian attack. And this exact position, mostly we looked at e6. But yeah, it had to be this exact position. But there's some argument for e5. You know, and the question is e6 or e5, which is better? a4, it's exactly the move that one of my students played. And my argument is against that move. My argument is against that move. According to Dvoretsky, you know, white shouldn't really like make moves on the queen side. In principle, in the King's Indian attack. But of course you can't, you know, just go all out with knight e1 and castles and attack me on the king's side. But the best move is c3 followed by a3. That's the most flexible formation. c3, a3, b4, and try to chip away at black's pawn structure, basically. So a4, while it's not a bad move, I think it's very inflexible for white and not optimal. So this isn't the most flexible pawn structure. It is a kind of classical setup. I actually had a game with the Czech Grandmaster Hracek back in the mid-90s where we had this line and he did something like this with white. Some order of moves, c3, knight c4, and I played h6 and bishop e6, and at some point I chopped his knight on c4. I'll still never really understand what I was thinking in that game. I did something like bishop e6 and bishop takes c4, and I suffered for like 100 moves after that to make a draw. But generally speaking, I should never exchange bishop for knight on c4. So it was something very similar to this. h3 is the baitable move. Normally not seen in this particular variation. Black kind of takes over on the king side in some lines here. I think that white should, actually, I think that white should be prepared to play along the f-file, you know, somehow. But how? I had a simul game against one of my students where he played like knight h4, and I could have played g5, but I didn't. And there was also a Grandmaster game I found where the same happened, like knight h4 and black didn't play g5, but black should play g5 if knight h4. Maybe something like queen e2 or c3 for white, some kind of neutral move there. He's playing knight h2, but I think white has problems here. It's playable. Knight h2. Yeah, maybe it's not so bad. Alright, we're going to get developed with tempo. Force him to weaken his king side. And the other thing that black can do, I could switch plans and play d5. No, he just blundered. Ignoring me? No. He's got d6. Actually, it's not a blunder. I didn't anticipate that. Rook b1. Well, this is a neutral move. It's not offensive at all. So I can play d5. But mostly we're planning on f5 type ideas. Interesting. d5 opens up the white squares. He has a playable game there. What about exchanging h3 for the d6 pawn? I don't know. I think the central pawn's too important to give up. f5 feels kind of thematic. Maybe we go with that. Yeah, I don't know why I was tanking so long here. It seems like f5 is the right move. Increasing our control of the center. He meets it with f4. Man, this is going to get kind of sharp. Interesting. So he's able to keep the tension. Taking on e4, not good for me now. Oh no, but I can take on e4 because his knight is screwed up. Keeper pawn playing a little too quickly. His principal idea is right, you know, to meet f4 with f5, or f5 with f4. Soroche, welcome. I didn't even see you there. Vasham chess. How to quit chess. I never quit chess. I was very inactive in the last, relatively inactive, tournament-wise, in the last years. But quitting is not something I'm capable of doing. So d5 followed by taking on e5 should leave me with a better structure. It's also a question about whether to take on f1 with check or not. Probably won't hurt to throw this in. I can maybe take over the f file, which benefits my position. I may be missing something tactically, guys. I have a tendency to do that when I'm down to like 2 minutes. But I'm just aiming to play d5. Capture the e5 pawn with a knight, probably, and leave myself with a superior structure. I mean, he's gonna... Now, there's also knight d4, but I don't know if it's good. A little complicated, the knight d4. But it may be good. I mean, I do win a piece in that line. Knight d4, queen takes e4, d5. Queen takes g6. And I have a problem with bishop takes h6 coming up. Maybe it's easier to just play d5. Just not giving him this counterplay with queen takes e4. It looks like he might have some play there. It's kind of complicated, so this was my original plan. I think this is good. White's lost too much control in the center. Queen takes g6, knight takes g6. Thank you for the suggestion. I overlooked that completely. The g6 pawn is protected, so knight d4 was just winning outright. Never mind. Thank you for the... It was protected. I forgot I had the other knight there on e7. This is a simple solution to a simple problem. Anyway, fortunately our position is so good we have multiple options. But right there, yeah, I just overlooked it was protected. I'm always like cautious, you know, in this case. Yeah, he just is lost. If knight d4, he has to move the queen somewhere, but probably queen d1. Okay, it doesn't win by force, it just drives his queen back to d1. Ultimately, I'd have to play d5 anyway. Might even transpose. Although in this instance, knight d4 would play queen d1 transposing to that line. We have a lot of options here. d4, d4, e3 like last game with the protected passed pawn. He's got some attack against h6 lined up maybe. Everything's good for black here. Let's keep it simple. This will deny his bishop and just play like last game. A protected pass pawn on the 6th rank. This pawn will fall and we'll be up a clear pawn, a massive pawn on e3. The same kind of pawn that made our last opponent resign. There are probably other ways to win the game. But I think this should be good enough. Should be good enough. He could play knight f6 check, but I don't mind. At this point, my dark squared bishop isn't exactly the best piece in the world. Blocked by my pawns. I don't mind trading my bishop on f6. Missing free queen? Well, I'm sure I would have seen it if I had played that variation, but I didn't see it in advance. Bishop e4. Knight takes e5. Now I see my bishop. My knight is protecting his his threat of g6. His threat against g6. Not going to miss it twice. But strategically, White's play was questionable. The problem of the knight. The knight was unstable on c4. Too many problems. His plan to play f4 was good, to meet f5 with f4, but tactically it looks like he had to play he would have had to have played like e takes f, giving up a lot of his center. In fact, giving up a lot of control to center. Okay, this is really lost. If I can just attack g3. Looks assailable. Assailable. Knight f1 and bishop takes h3, undermining the protection of g3. Ooh, he didn't care. Didn't care. That's worse. Alright, so Classic King's Indian attack meets f5. Andrea Perrone. The Dvoretsky system is pretty effective. I don't really like the King's Indian attack, guys, against that formation. It's just like white is got maybe equal position at best. I wouldn't try to play that for an advantage for white. I don't like it. The system's too good for black, basically. There's certain situations where the King's Indian attack is good. Like if you play e4 and black plays c5 and you play knight f3 and black plays e6. In particular, like against French type formations, I think that the King's Indian attack is a very valid system. And a lot of players do that. They'll play like specifically King's Indian attack only against French type structures. But in the other structures, like where I played the Botvinnik type of pawn formation, I don't think that white gets anything with the typical King's Indian attack like that. All right, Andrea, maybe we'll play play e4. Guys, on Wednesdays I do a stream where I play unusual openings. Everyone's cautioning someone about their challenge. Now, Abaraba's challenging me to a rated game, but I definitely don't play unknown people or anybody with rated games because I'm spending all my time talking. The rated games are kind of disadvantageous. The ST won $500 in a poker tournament. The entry was $50. It was a no-limit hold'em tournament, and he got third. I slow played pocket tens and flopped a set. He had a flop straight and lost. I mean, his opponent had flopped a straight. Well, yeah, slow playing pocket tens isn't something I really ever recommend. But I guess if it's like heads up or something. So, the ST, on Friday I played a $100 buy-in here at a Budapest Poker Club. It was actually one of the worst fields of players I've ever seen. They were awful. They were awful. But what's this d5? Wow, I've never seen this move. It's kind of like a delayed elephant gambit. I guess you're not giving me much choice. I have to take on d5. Anyway, make a long story short, DST, I got my aces cracked. It was an ideal situation, middle of this 100-player tournament, and there was this really loose fish with a lot of chips. I was in the big blind. I had pocket aces with about 35 big blinds, and looking to get all my chips in against the donkey. And basically, there were 3 limpers. Then this guy, who was a massive fish, he raised to like 4 big blinds. I didn't want to play like a 5-way pot, so I made it 10 big blinds pre-flop, intending to just push on any flop or put my stack halfway in. And everybody folded to the fish, who just called, which was like, whatever. I don't care what the flop is. I'm going to just play for the rest of my chips. So he had king queen, called my re-raise. I have just like a pot-sized bet left on the flop, and he flopped 2 kings and took me out. But it would have been the same thing, like had the guy just hit 1 king, and had he just hit 1 king and like sucked out on me a 2nd king. I mean, I can't fold pocket aces because there's 2 kings on the board, and I have just like a pot-sized bet left. So that was it. But it was funny. A lot of bad players. $100 buy-in, a $50 buy-in are pretty weak tournaments. So it's very profitable. That was our poker moment for the day. C3, Andrea Perrone. I don't know about D5. Looks like a pretty suspicious line. Suspicious. Bishop C4, Queen E4 check, or Queen takes G2. So we are up a pawn, and Black has a C3 Sicilian type of position here. But Queen E4 check. If I was to play f3, I would sacrifice the pawn back. I don't really want to sacrifice the pawn back, but black is threatening to take my knight on e5. I guess I could play f4. It's kind of a tough one. King queen always beat aces. It was ridiculous. It was the absolute like best situation that could possibly happen for me, you know, to get like aces against this huge donkey. And whatever, I mean, that's life. But I didn't have enough chips that there was ever a situation where I was folding. I mean, he would have called with one king or pocket tens or anything. So it was no way. I only had 25 big blinds left, and there was like 24 big blinds in the pot. I just can't ever fold an overpair. A king 5 board. Well, he might have called me with like pocket sevens or something, you know. There's just no way to get away from it. Bishop d6 here. I can just retreat, but it feels very passive to retreat. I don't know. f4 looks weakening. I can't sacrifice material here. Queen f3 is interesting. Interesting option, not to lose material maybe. I don't know what to play, Andrea. You're always coming up with creative ideas. I honestly don't know what to play. I guess f4 feels like a move. Slightly risky though. Then how do I complete my development after that? Queen f3, is that for real? Maybe I really should play queen f3. Let's try it. It looks as good as anything. All right. That was the first time my aces got cracked in a while, but it happens. Hi William, a 2700 played this in the World Championship. This is you're talking about like the World Rapid Championship or World Blitz Tournament, World Blitz Championship in Doha, Qatar. Is that what you're talking about? I assume. Yeah, I mean, looks like an interesting gambit to play in a blitz or fast time control. I agree. It's not it's elephant gambit-ish. It looks like there may be some tricks. Queen a5. A knight c4 now, unfortunately for you. Seems like it should be one of several good moves for me. I could also support my knight with bishop f4. But I mean, this move is simpler. I attack his queen, I gain a tempo, and eliminate probably a very important piece, the bishop, the dark squared bishop. So you played it against a GM yesterday for the first time, night on prees. Yeah, I had a hand DST where I had pocket aces in a turbo at the EPT Prague where I just like check folded on the flop in a heads up pot. The board was like Jack 10 Queen, and the guy had like a set of jacks. And I just check folded after re-raising pre-flop with pocket aces. I agree to people. The guy was shocked, you know, that I could just check fold without even like one bet. But in the above situation, I had predetermined I'm never folding. I can't fold because there's 2 kings on the board in a pot where I put in 10 big blinds pre-flop and I have just 25 left. This guy would have called me, you know, he wouldn't have folded anything like Queen F4 here, Queen G3. There's no way to know basically if my opponent has a king or not, you know. It's not like it was earlier in the tournament. This was toward the end. Queen G3. You know, I could fold my pocket aces, have the guy show me pocket sevens or pocket aces or pocket tens or just a bluff. You know, I mean, there's no way I could possibly fold there. Everybody knew I had pocket aces or pocket kings, except for him, pre-flop, but... Or maybe he did too. I don't know. Alright, well, we're going to drive you back again. Put the queen on e5. You've got to play bishop back to e6, then I castle. And white should be winning here. You gain another tempo on my queen, but you're down a pawn. I have the bishop pair, and got to be careful of one more tactic. Looks like knight takes d4, and I'm getting low on time. I am getting low on time. Queen f4, queen c5, queen e3. I guess queen e3. Keeping d4 protected. This is getting a little scary. But Andrea plays too much for time as well. He's not taking his time. He's got a bad score. He plays too quickly. And often he's sacrificing unsoundly. This pawn wants sacrifice okay. You know, I think that, like you said, if it was played in some rapid championship, it's playable. It's not totally bad. Alright, let's not waste time. Let's get the rest of the pieces developed here. He doesn't listen. Still, black has some compensation. Now he's going to sacrifice a piece. I'm not sure if he did the right thing here with g4. I mean, you could have just sacrificed the piece straight away. Maybe it would be simpler to do that than to throw in g4, which I'm not sure really makes the situation any better for black. Maybe it would be better just to straight up, you know, sacrifice on d5. I have my increment, which is just enough. I'm not going to lose on time unless there's something really, really bad that comes up here. But he's now losing all of his pieces. I think he just gets nervous because of the time pressure or something, but there's no justification for losing that. Rook on h8. I've also got an attack on a7, but I'm not hunting pawns here. Yeah, I don't know, Andrea. You really... should just sacrifice on d5. I mean, I don't see... That position looks kind of dicey. You know, you do have some compensation in that situation. Let's save our piece. Bishop f6, saving a tempo, maybe? Saving a bishop and saving a tempo, attacking his rook. Too much play for time. Time is not the main issue here. I can play the whole game with 3-second increments. You got to get a good position, and that's the main point. You can't just hope that my optical mouse like freezes up on me and I might lose on time. There is a small chance that will happen, but it's not something to bank on. With the knight captures, did not expect that. We're up a rook. I want to thank everyone for joining me here. We are playing for another hour and 10 minutes till 12:30, which I do every day, Monday to Friday. Wednesdays I play a special stream where I'm playing unusual openings, stuff I wouldn't normally play otherwise. Everything's protected. After knight e3, my rook is protected. Potzer sees a check, plays a check. I can just take his knight. I mean, it's simplified, but it doesn't seem particularly well placed on g7. But in general, you're up a rook, you want to trade pieces. He's kind of the master of Zwischenzugs. I think he does it on purpose. But I've noticed this quite a bit. Whenever I'm playing him, like, he does unexpected moves quite frequently. I've known a few players who do that on purpose. Brian Wall is like a FIDE master from the United States, and he does that. Like, intentionally make like strange moves that you wouldn't expect, just for some kind of practical effect. But this position, just there's nothing for black. There just isn't any hope, other than me losing on time. But the opening, I agree, was interesting. d5, why not? Too many knights hanging now. Something's got to give. One of them hanging directly, one of them hanging indirectly. Yeah, the sacrifice, knight takes g3. It's a double sacrifice. We have this. I don't think he can save both dogs. Sometimes knights look like... Someone was complaining they wanted the chess base pieces. Sometimes the knights look like dogs. These are slightly dog-like, but I think they're more horse-like than dog-like. So anyway, moving on. Andrea's going to slowly lose this one. I want to thank all you guys for joining me. Jeroen for being here to moderate. And oh, by the way, so Weekend Z is taking place. I didn't even start talking about it. I didn't get to look at all the games. I saw a few. Carlsen winning yesterday. Richard Rapport managed to draw with Karyakin. He didn't go completely berserk. He had the common sense to just kind of like keep the position. Again, playing like a ridiculous opening. He played b3 against Karyakin. I mean, b3 isn't that bad, but, you know, it's not really great, and you really shouldn't play substandard openings against people who are like the vice world champion, you know. So Rockport is not going to win any games in this tournament if he continues to play the absurdities. I mean, b3 is fine against weak players, but it's not like Karyakin's never seen b3 before. You know, you're not surprising him. So, alright. Next game, Zen Chess, Tatsuar, Pawn Spanker, Abaraba, and Geese. Another game that was interesting was Adiban, like losing to Hari Krishna. That was an interesting opening. It was a Roy Lopez, some sort of Roy Lopez where Hari Krishna was white, and it looked like Hari Krishna fell into some kind of trick or something. He was worse. But he managed to outplay Adiban after that, which I thought was really ironic, because if anybody here was like following last year's event, you know, how the way that Adiban qualified for the main event was basically constantly getting bad positions and then outplaying his opponents in the B tournament last year. This year he's starting with like getting a good position and then getting outplayed by his countryman Hari Krishna. Alright, Zen Chess. Zen Chess earlier said he's watched my videos for years, so hopefully not too much that you know what I'm going to do before I do it. Let's just play like a normal Slav. I've been playing a lot of Queen C2, and earlier on the stream today I played the move E3 in a different move order. I think it was Knight F3, D5. No, it must have been C4, C6, Knight F3, D5, E3. But anyway, let's just play a normal Slav with Knight C3. I haven't played it lately because I don't have really a very up-to-date knowledge of the latest theory. The Slav is, I say this all the time and I believe it's true, probably the most popular defense to D4. So if there's one opening where you really need to know some theory, it's probably this one. And it's evolving constantly. So although not as sharp as some other openings, some of the variations are extremely sharp. Like this one, Bishop G5. Abaraba, thank you for changing your challenge. I'm just saying whatever Yaron says. But indeed, thank you for changing your challenge. I have challenges from Tatsuar, Pawn Spanker. Those guys are all regulars. Geese, Abaraba. Yeah, he changed his challenge from unrated to rated. Wanted to thank you. You advised me to buy the book by Gary Kasparov, My Great Predecessors, and my boyfriend really, really loves it. Oh, thank you for the tip. Okay, Little Penguin, you're welcome. Penguin, you're welcome. That was a long time ago. Yeah, I remember now. Awesome. Yeah, there's a series. I mean, they're not exactly, you know, bargain basement books. Quite expensive, but very, very high quality. Both in like material and material. You know, like very high quality books by Kasparov. The Great Predecessor series. So highly recommended. Zen Chess now plays the good old Cambridge Springs variation. If I play E3, it's not exactly a normal move order, I guess. But there's nothing I can really do in the interim. Most people don't play the Cambridge Springs out of the Slav move order. That's pretty unusual, but I guess there's nothing special I can do. I mean, you could play E4 here. I think I saw Igor Foigl do that before. It doesn't look right, though. In this position, maybe not. Anyway, I don't really know the theory here. This move probably transposes to an exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit, which isn't really what I normally do. So, although the knight is committed to d7 fairly early, it looks like we're going to end up playing like a standard exchange variation, which isn't my normal repertoire, although years ago I used to play it. My knight is already committed to f3, black's knight is already committed to d7, which really limits both sides' plans. You haven't played the Semi-Slav in ages, forgot everything. Well, it doesn't matter now. Awesome Little Penguin. Yeah, it's a very good, very, very good book. Queen c2 isn't even really necessary here. Black's not even threatening like bishop f5. So maybe, although like sometimes black can play queen b6 and attack my pawn on b2. It's the standard square for the queen in this line. I'm going to play like e3 and bishop d3. But I'm out of book 2 here. Zen Chess played h6. That's debatable. He's 2181. That's a pretty high rating. But h6, making me seriously consider like playing my bishop back to f4 in this position. If I do that, I'm sure black has some answers. Like he could play knight b6 and bishop d6 and try to trade. Bishop h4, more standard type of plan. Bishop h4. Am I afraid of g5? g5, bishop g3, knight h5. Are you really going to do that? Kamsky would like rip your head off with those white square weaknesses. I guess I don't recommend g5. If that's your intention, it's more than welcome. But the real question is, should I play bishop f4 or bishop h4? After bishop f4, bishop h4. Talking like John Fedorovich now, ripping people's heads off. He likes violent commentary like that. It's like watching an action movie. Bishop h4. Bishop d6, yeah. I didn't expect you to do that. I don't know why. I don't think we're going to find too many games in this exact position. But bishop d6 is much better than playing g5. I would resist the temptation to weaken my position in that way. When you're mostly castling kingside in this variation, it's not like it's the King's Indian. It starts with the oldest players and gets more modern in every book. Yeah, so the first book must be like Steinitz or something. I don't have the first book. I have the most of the later ones. I'll get around to purchasing it at some point. I don't know, bishop e2 or bishop d3. This is a standard square. Not a standard position. For me, though, it is kind of standard. You know what this position is? Can anybody tell me what this position is? What other position this is exactly? From what other opening is this position an exact copy, basically? Let me give you a hint. I'm playing a system that's normally played with black. I'm playing a position I would normally play with black. Can anybody name it? The Carlsbad. Well, okay, I guess that's used as a description of the structure in many instances. What we have here on the board is actually an exchange variation of the Caro-Kann. That would normally be like colors reversed. E4, C6, D4, D5, E takes D, C takes D, bishop D3, knight C6, C3. This position I've played a lot as black in the exchange Caro-Kann. And he doesn't have a very effective version of it. So the plan The plan for me is a minority attack on the queen side with rook b1, followed by b4, b5. h6 doesn't really benefit black. I mean, in many lines of those Caro-Kann exchange variations, I would normally retreat my bishop to h4 voluntarily and even like try to neutralize the bishop on d6. Spending a tempo on playing bishop h4 myself. So here we have a kind of good version. White plays on the queen side, and black would like to play on the king side. But as is often the case, his pawn lever that he needs to play f4 is very hard to achieve because obviously I've got control of this diagonal. It's near his king. It involves weakening the king side. So the structural plans for both sides, White's plan is much easier to achieve. London system, well, in some respects may be similar to the London system, but we don't have an actual London system bishop at present. Bishop b4, sidestepping my threat there of knight to b5. But he doesn't really want to do that. Bishop b3, bishop g3, excuse me. The only thing that's given me momentary pause is evaluating black's chances to blockade, like the position after a3, bishop takes c3, b takes c, knight b6, or something like that. Knight e5, not so clear. I like White's game though. I like White's game a lot. This should be good enough. You could even take with the queen on c3, allow him to play knight e4 and just move away. I think that's also reasonable. But I'm going with the more complicated plan of trying to increase my central majority. Maybe b5 should be played. It's not easy though. He has a bit of counterplay on the white square blockade plan. f5. Try to block the white squares up. But objectively, I don't know. It looks a little bit suspicious. Strategically, white is better developed. I have 4-on-3 pawn majority in the center. If you guys want a book that teaches you a lot of strategic concepts like that, I mean, I think that I recommend Uwe's book on the middle game. I've said this many times, but I have to repeat myself because there's all kinds of new people watching the stream all the time. So former world champion Max Uwe wrote a 2-book series on the middle game where he really goes into great detail on strategic concepts. And one of them is this whole idea of the 4 central files, really. I mean, he's got 2 pawns in the center, the vicinity of the central 4 lines. I have 3, so I have more pawns in the center area that are affecting the game. And Knight b6, nice combative move there, buddy. Not too happy about that. Knight e5, bishop e6, or something. If I don't walk in any kind of tactic. My queen, if bishop e6, my queen have a flight square on b7. Someone mentioned flight square earlier. I'm also trying to trap his queen in a very abstract way. All my pieces are defended for the most part. I can kick him out. Kick him out with f3. Trying to get the bishop. Maybe now. There's no time for this. My position is so good strategically. Perhaps I should just take straight away on b7. f3, rook c8. There's just one variation that bugs me a little bit here. The fact that my rook might be hanging in some lines. It doesn't seem that bad. Knight d2. I think here I'm just going to bail out. I'm about to lose on time. We have a very good position strategically, so queen c3 is a nice safe move to trade the queens. And we just keep our strategic advantage. But he's doing a good job hanging on. I think that might have been a mistake. He should have perhaps traded queens. I don't know, though. Hard to say. There was a more complicated variation. After I played f3, he had rook c8, queen takes b7, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, followed by queen takes a3. This is getting kind of irritating, man. I guess I can take this one. Hope I'm not missing something tactically. I keep forgetting that Zen Chess is 2181. He played the opening badly, so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh well, he's a lower rated player, but he's really solidly 2181. That's a quite respectable rating. Now the position is like symmetrical. I'm losing on time. Looks like he's surviving this somehow. I don't like the way he played this game, but it's probably... Well, this last move may have been a mistake. It was probably okay until knight c4. But now if you leave me with the outside a-pawn, I think you're in trouble again. I started to make very, very hesitant moves. But dropping the a-pawn looks good for white. This pawn, very, very powerful. Famous last words, however. I don't want my bishop to get trapped. Whoa. Now his king is in a bad way. The bishop on f6. to get out of the way of the A pawn. Alright, Zen Chess, I think that both of us played pretty credibly at first, but the ending, we made a lot of mistakes due to time pressure. But I don't think that opening is... You didn't really get a good version of the exchange variation. Bishop b4, queen c7, bishop b4 wasn't really the right solution. And I think h6 is debatable on the king's side. Maybe don't play h6 at all. Leave my bishop on g5 and try to do something like knight f8. Try to play like knight f8, knight g6, or to unravel that way. Unclear the whole game. Really, at the end, I don't know what was going on. I'm sure you were okay somehow. Little Penguin says, "Oh no, Crusader of Hope. I can win when the other plays blind. When he plays blind, and I gave him a lot of whiskey. Yeah, that usually does have a negative impact." The blindfolded whiskey game sounds like a kind of fun idea. You guys have heard of that? Like, what is it, like drink chess or whatever? When all the pieces are alcoholic beverages, and every one you capture, you have to drink it. But imagine that if it was like a blindfold game. That'd be really funny. Blindfold drink chess. Vasham says, at 10 years old, I thought being allowed to move 2 pawns of 1 square, the first move of the game, was a thing. When I first learned chess, I thought it was like checkers. I think I knew the rules. I think I knew the correct rules of poker well before I knew the correct rules of chess. Probably poker maybe around the same time. When I was maybe like 8 or 9. I used to think you just play chess like to capture all the pieces, and I didn't understand what checkmate was. Itatsawar, okay. So this is a system I've used a lot with white, and now we see h6 and g5, but in the King's Indian, h6 and g5 is kind of okay in most instances. The bishop still protects the f5 square. The most common defenses really are like c5 going to a kind of Benoni. And then you get a lot of people who try to play this for black like it's just a standard, you know, normal King's Indian with knight on bd7, but I don't think those setups are really that effective. Better to play Benoni type of sort of formation. The first time I played with black, you're probably looking at like Boris Golko versus me, from a very, very old game in Chicago in the mid-90s. I started playing the system with white because Golko beat me so bad in this position that I just decided, I was black, I decided, oh, I'll start playing this with white. And I did something like this against Golko. Basically, I tried to pretend it was like a Trompowsky, and I played g5 and knight h5 and knight takes g3, and then I tried to do like e6 and something along the lines of like queen e7 and knight c6. But I remember Boris just like played queen c2 and crushed me like a dog. He played d5 at some point, and all the white squares started to collapse in my position. Somewhere in the closet with the score sheets, that game probably remains. But instead, Itatsawar did f5 quite early. It could be a little too early, the g5 here. The f5. Do we have any sort of tactic? Not to my knowledge. Mark Esserman did something like this against me once in a game that was a draw. But I don't think even he dared to do f5 this early. Knight d2, knight takes g3, h takes g3, threatening queen h5 check. But he can go back to f6 as well, so he's not committed to taking the bishop. It seems kind of strange, though, to go to all these lengths and then like play knight f6. One would admit that seems a little odd. The other possibility is d5, but it's double-edged. I mean, his bishop becomes very powerful after that. Why don't you play Crazy House? Well, just not enough time in life, I guess. If I had an extra 10 hours every day, I'd probably include Crazy House in my life, but it seems like I don't have time to do everything I already want to do. So he took on g3, and I was saying this the other day, I just want to get really good at normal chess. Not really enough time. So I was thinking he might even go back there, but anyway. I assume this is probably theory for this variation. I have played this position before. I've done maniacal stuff like f4, but I don't think I invented that myself. Saw the aforementioned BG has played stuff like that. BG with the best record against Kasparov. I think he beat him 2 or 3 times. But I like this for black. It's okay. Not everybody's style to castle into this expanded kingside, but I was thinking about playing for g4, but I don't see how it's going to work. And black has e5. However, I guess that move is pretty double-edged. We've got to do something. Just play chess. What would Aronian do, right? He would just find some good moves and do the best he can with the practical situation at hand. Well, I do really like white here. White. I said while. I do need glasses, but I'm putting it off. I don't know if I like white. I don't know. I've always been kind of on the fence about these type of positions. It's not my favorite setup to play against. I think that black has adequate counter chances. We're planning on castling queenside. As I mentioned earlier, I have played f4 and like put my king on f2. Alternatively, but bad things can happen when you do that, like the knight bouncing from d7 to f6 and like g4. It gets kind of dodgy. I guess I'd have to have an extended conversation with Boris Gulko about this variation before I'd feel real confident in knowing what to do. Most people with black are afraid to weaken the king side. But as long as you have the bishop on g7, it is very hard for white to break through. f4 is an idea. The problem is the dark squares are hard for white to control, particularly like d4. There we go. There we go. I mean, that's the problem. And if I play d5, at some point e6 will come in, but I don't think I have better. I guarantee you guys I've played this position before, but not recently. Blitz games. A million blitz games in similar positions. Another guy who plays this with white is the Armenian-American Grandmaster Varuzhan Akobian. I think Varuzhan actually played it against me years and years ago in Spain. We had a game that was a draw that I completely forgot about. I couldn't really remember what the opening was, but in retrospect, I think that Varuzhan played bishop g5. He had a colleague, International Master Nadanian, who also played a setup with me with white. Those guys were working on this. Nadanian is kind of a theoretician. He invented the idea of knight a4 in the Grunfeld. And once he beat me in the New York Open, when I was black against this system, that was around the same time that I lost to Gulko. Those two games made me start playing this for white, basically. Not really sure what I'm doing here. But Atatsar played this like perfectly. Man, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I have a strange idea. This is not a strange idea. This is a standard idea. Undermining the white squares is the plan. But my follow-up is going to be a little bit of the bigger question. What do you do after this? He's played this flawlessly. See if he continues to do so. I haven't been playing this line very much lately, so I feel like I'm a little bit out of practice. The themes aren't coming to me as fast as they used to. Yes. Yes, knight g4. It's absolutely the best move. Answering me like a master. Knight e5 coming. So I have to play this super awkward knight f3. And I don't know what to make of this position. I think black should be at least equal. Again, it's kind of a standoff. It feels a little bit like a standoff. But I feel like black's position is more dynamic than white's somehow. With those bishops. Look at this queen a5 now. Well, I'm not averse to castling kingside if I have to. But it's probably not necessary. We can play like king f1. The Van Welly type of reaction. Van Welly lost yesterday, Jeroen. He lost to Elianov in not a great game. The opening looked very standard, but then Van Welly went wrong. Van Welly. I should pronounce his name correctly. Van Welly. I can't help reverting to my American pronunciation of everything, like Aronian. E6. Wow, the dynamism at work here. You could play e5, you know, in which case I probably have to take on e6. So I don't know what is there to really think about is the question. Look at those raking bishops. Black is better. No? We just hope our rook is relevant at some point. I mean, I could play knight h2 if I have to, but I'm not really looking forward to that. f4? Oh man, he lost his mind. It's almost self-mate. No, it's not that bad. f4, whoa. This move wouldn't have occurred to me ever. Wow. That seems crazy. f4? How can you do f4? That is insane. Bishop d4? What is going on around here? This is just too bizarre. But his king side is like melted down. The time pressure just got to him. He got nervous in time pressure. It was an excellent opening at Tatsuar. It was an excellent opening, and even then, I mean, if you just don't play f4, I think still you have a good game. Maybe queen a5 is debatable, but I think it's okay. Rook d8 and not clear. I think I'd rather be black. I mean, black has the more dynamic position. Pawn Spanker, Abaraba. They might be the last two games for today, guys. Mubad is like gone off. So c4, Pawn Spanker's played a lot of games against me, but he plays all different stuff, and I'm not sure he's always playing the English. Let's try the c4 e5 because I haven't played this lately. It's not really my like usual response. Pawn Spanker, did we have a game like this the other day? Were you the one who played e4 against me? Yeah, that's funny. I guess I forgot about that. He doesn't want me to play f5. He's like he's trying to stop me from playing f5. It seems. That's apparently the intention. I could play it like a kind of form of King's Gambit. Okay, let's just play positionally here. Nothing fancy. It looks like a Vienna game, but he's played c4. This has to be very okay for black. A kind of closed Sicilian with colors reversed. Maybe it was Pawn Spanker the other day. I had a game that was something like g3, or how was it? No, knight f3, I guess. It was maybe knight f3, f5, and he played e4. And the game was very strange. So now he's played e4. I think it was against you, Pawn Spanker. I could be mistaken. One thing you never do, though, Tatsuar, in those lines, under any circumstances, is like ever trade off your dark squared bishop for anything, because it's like your sole defender of the king side. That bishop is worth a rook. The bishop on g7. So when you played bishop d4, I knew you had gone pretty far, a little too far there. Okay, well, we're just gonna play solid positional chess here against Pawn Spanker. Closed Sicilian / Vienna game. Whatever you can call it. You can call it the English or you can call it e4. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. One way or the other. But I want to be the first one to maybe land on f5. He may be first. The pawn breaks are very important. I do have a bishop on c5 attacking this diagonal. So he has to be careful about things like queen h4 check. a3 looks very slow. I don't think this is a constructive move here. I think this is a waste of time. Now I can play f5. Why not? That's a very aggressive move. It would be maybe the most cautious to play knight e7. But I want to get the knight to f6, play along the f-file if I can. I'm not afraid of queen h5 check because of g6. If he takes the pawn, my bishop comes out and develops with tempo. a3 feels to me like a really, really unnecessary move. Are you I.M. Silman? Haven't you written a book or article? I am not I.M. Silman. I don't really know Jeremy Silman, but I respect his work. You know, he's not a snake oil salesman like a lot of chess authors. Silman is he's a legit chess teacher and writer, and he's one of the people I would respect as far as chess writers. A lot of them do it for just money or something, but it seems like Silman is really, really, really legitimate. You know, he seems to really care about the quality of stuff that he produces. I don't know Jeremy Silman. He's a little bit older than me and not my generation, but I respect his work. So Pawn Spanker is gone with this kind of wing gambit here. Looks extremely dangerous for white. I have queen f6 amongst other things. Queen h4. I guess queen h4 might just be winning. Yeah. Queen h4 looks winning because I've got g3. Oof. I almost moved my king. Yeah, king h4. Okay. Queen h4 and g3. Well, that looks really awkward for white. The old fool's mate. Justified here, though. I think it's justified. It's a sort of king's gambit. Well, I mean, my intention is to play g3, and it looks like pretty nasty for white. And other good stuff. And we have some nasty tricks too. Ooh. There's some nasty, nasty tricks here. You have a book by G.M. Neil MacDonald and another I.M. Watson that I'm reading at the moment on opening theory. Would you say they're good authors? Watson is undoubtedly a good author, and Neil MacDonald I met in Budapest like around 2005. He's also seemingly a very thoughtful player. I haven't really read his books. He doesn't have that many, but he seems to be an expert in some openings. He is regarded as an opening expert in certain lines. So he's also a pretty strong player. He did get the GM title. In this question, bishop takes f2 check, queen takes f2, g3. It's kind of hard to see a move for white. You guys have any suggestions? I guess it doesn't win outright. But I don't really see a good answer. He's going to have to evacuate, basically. Well, I know Neil MacDonald wrote a book on like the Kalashnikov or something like that, and he seems to be maybe doing stuff with the English with white. But I haven't heard much about him in a long time. John Watson, on the other hand, is like a lifetime chess author. So he's also a good player, you know, and I think that's what you're looking for most of the time. People who are both very strong players and good authors. It's not enough to be just a good player, and it's not enough to be just an author. You have to be both a good player and an author, I would think, ideally. So king d1, yeah. King d1. I've never written any books. I thought about it, but I just don't have the, like... I haven't had the stick-with-itness to commit to that kind of project. But I think eventually I might. But I wouldn't want to write a chess book unless it was really like an act of love. You know, I don't want to just write chess books to make money or something like that. And it's probably a silly way to try to do so because they don't really generate that much profit. I don't think that chess authors make a whole lot of money by writing chess books. It's not like a New York Times bestseller. But if I ever do write a chess book, it will be a labor of love. I have thought about it. One topic that I've thought about is like doing a book about like coordination in chess. But it's really a very specific, very, very specific subject. So I don't think it would be that big a seller. We'd have to broaden the... I'll probably have to broaden my concept. A book of my collected games, maybe. G3. Very time-consuming writing books. Well, you have to really commit yourself to it. But there are certain people out there in the chess world who just crank out books, you know, and the quality's not that high. I would want to write something that had a lasting value. So now my queen is attacked. We have like queen h5 pinning, but he has bishop e2. This is a cool position. He hasn't had time to mount an offensive with something like knight d5 or knight b5. A little bit of congestion in the white position. This is what I'm talking about, coordination, actually. We're speaking about coordination now. Not to mention my g-pawn, but we're threatening to win like a lot of his pieces here, basically. Queen takes f3 and queen takes h1, and then make a new queen with like g2, g1. This queen on d2 in particular gets in the way of all the white's pieces, so he's not well coordinated. a3 was a bad move that wasted time in a position that, you know, one could argue he had already wasted time. c4 and e4 are kind of redundant, you know, in a sense. We normally see this kind of structure with one of those moves or the other, but not both. But then he played a3 as well. So a lot of people talk about making too many pawn moves in the opening. I mean, this is kind of that situation. There's too many pawn moves. He didn't need to make all these pawn moves. Now bishop g2. I expected bishop e2, but I had a very, very nasty rejoinder there. Bishop g4. So with bishop g2, he blockades my pawn, and that's a much better idea. Bishop g2 is, in short, a damn good move. Oops. There's no bishop g4 anymore, and white has some threats. Knight d4. Maybe I should play something along the lines of bishop e6. Knight d4, how am I going to meet that? Knight d4, knight d5 is what I'm saying. Knight d4, knight d5, knight takes f3, queen e2 is the issue. So I guess I should play knight e7 and try to play rook f8 or something like that. Castles, maybe attack f3. Queen g5, well. Okay, queen g5 is a non-threatening move. We should just be winning based on our pawn on g3. And this huge bind we have in the position. So queen h5, knight ge7, I was just unsure about knight b5, but I can probably just sacrifice this pawn on c7 with castles. And it looks like a good game. Or knight d4. Pawn spanker, though, we have to be careful. He's very fast. He likes to pretend he's going to lose on time. But he rarely hangs pieces, and he's very quick when he needs to be. So he's salvaging his situation here at the cost of a couple of pawns. He's only down a couple pawns. Guys, I'm going to play one more game after this. Now what? Well, that move. That's it. He's not going to be able to save himself. That is decisive. He still managed to stop a mate. Alright, pawn spanker. Too many pawn moves. Abaraba. Unless this is a really short game, this will probably be the last one today, geese. It's almost time to go. Abaraba is white. Abaraba is 1889. 1900 games. Good luck. That room that Sludgy's in looks depressing. You need some color on the wall. Okay. You know what? You missed my tiki wall. When I was streaming from the US, I had the jungle partition. But you're right, I should probably have some decorations. I thought about maybe doing a puppet show with Kermit the Frog to start today's stream, but then I thought better of it. That's probably going too far. You know, we should probably have just a little bit of mild decor in the background. I wouldn't call it depressing, though. It's kind of neutral. It's like a doctor's office or something. Depressing would be like if it was dark. I wouldn't agree with depressing. I would say maybe a little bit like dull. We could spice it up a little bit. He could be from Papua New Guinea, although a lot of people just put random countries in their profile, so you can never be 100% sure. But I think that Papua New Guinea is pretty civilized now. Not like in the 1930s when it was like headhunters. I'm not an expert, but I think there probably are chess players in Papua New Guinea. Knight to c3, and we're going into our favorite classical Sicilian. We need a chess poster. Alright, yeah, I've actually thought of this myself recently. We could add a little decor. I'm not going to put up a big poster of Magnus Carlsen in my office. Maybe a really hot female chess player poster. We can probably buy an Alexandra Kostyniuk poster online or something. I bet she sells her own posters. Bishop e3. Wow, the variation I actually featured last week against Mickey 5-5, I think. We had a couple games in this. I will take the consideration, you know, into decorating a little bit. Now that we're getting more viewers, I think it's probably a valid consideration. The puppet shows are creepy in general. What? You should have had a painting of a sailing ship, so you can make legitimate pirate jokes. Alright, we'll take suggestions for decor. But you're right, it's a legitimate request. Put a poster of yourself on the wall. I'm pretty modest about... I should have, yeah, but I could put it like a trophy shelf or something. That would be like kind of standard, right? I don't have too many trophies here in Budapest. All of my trophies, my chess trophies for the most part, are back in the US. Have to have them shipped over by sea mail or something. And by the way, if you live in Europe or you have any reason to transport things, from what I've heard, if you ever need to do like, you know, long distance shipping, don't use sea mail. I had a friend who, you know, he didn't want to pay to have his books airmailed or something like that, and he had a whole bunch of like chess books. He tried to ship a whole bunch of chess books by sea mail, and it never made it there. So don't attempt sea mail. Habaraba, I know. You know who was Constant Change was played this variation against me. The Karaklaj. Castles e6, bishop takes c6, b takes c, or castles e6, knight takes c6 was. This was Constant Change's failed novelty. Don't trade knight for knight. You want the knights in this type of position. White wants those knights. You want to play with knights against bishops. Queen f3 right away. Well, move orders, interesting here. He seems quite expert. He's not exactly a blitz player. I mean bullet player, excuse me. Only 86 bullet games. Mostly blitz and classical. No, not too many classical either. Mostly just blitz. I'm a little bit worried here. He's got the super sophisticated move order going on. Everybody castles there, and he's playing queen f3. This is like some kind of subtle, secret novelty or something. What does it mean that he's playing queen f3 before castles kingside? It's an improvement on theory or something. I mean, he can castle queenside, but the point of castling kingside is to bring pressure to bear on f7, and that's normally, you know, it's actually quite difficult to attack d6. So the d file's not as dangerous. Castles kingside is the main line. This is all theory. Queen e7 is also possible, but I don't think it's regarded as quite as good as queen f6. Are you taking part in Tata Steel Challengers? I'm in the wrong place. Actually, someone talked to me about those round robins in Weekendse. Yeah, you could play. I could play in that, you know. But I've gone on quite a few trips in the last 2 months. So I've been away for a little too long lately, and I kind of wanted to stay around and hang out with you guys and work on my chess stream. And I have a lot of students, so I need to do my work. Abaraba, I think that you're supposed to not trade queens there. Seems to me that the main line may be like queen g3. queen g3, queen g6. But I'm not sure anymore. My theoretical knowledge doesn't really go that deeply in this line. I'm not expecting to see this too often. It's not considered to be dangerous, really. Sacrificing a pawn here is the recommended line for black. The Tata Steel Challengers, they have a lot of sections, you know, and you can qualify in one section and like move up to the next section, and then like the next year you can play in a higher section. It's pretty much like an open concept. Well, if you don't want the pawn, then you're not welcome to have it. I guess the question is, could I think about maybe king e7 instead of bishop e7 and reserve the possibility of, and I have to watch out for like piece sacrifices and stuff with knight f5 check and whatnot. Maybe bishop e7 is a little safer. The king on e7 looks like it could be subject to some kind of knight sacrifices, and this looks a little bit passiver, good word, a little bit more passive but safer than playing king e7. We could castle queenside or kingside depending on the situation. I don't really want to play this, as tempting as it is, because I don't really want to trade my bishop pair off. When you have the bishop pair, you generally want to keep it on the board. I would prefer not to part with one of my bishops and slowly try to outplay white here. Okay, if I play b5, unfortunately he can do some kind of piece sacrifice for like 3 pawns. Nah, he can't. He can, actually. Bishop takes b5, pawn takes d5, knight takes b5. Still black would be better there, but he'd have a lot of pawns. I think I should probably hold off on that. We'll hold off on that. This is okay. Opting to castle queenside. Now maybe I can think about b5. Well, now with my king here, I'm not sure if I really want to do that. Hard to make a decision when there's a lot of choices between different moves. There's a lot of options in this kind of position for black. You could play knight e5, you could play rook g8, you can castle kingside, you can castle queenside, you could play king d8, king c7, you could play b5. So it's an awful lot of choices. B4. Wow. Coming to get me. Maybe I'm going to change my mind here pretty soon with this knight e5 question. One more prophylactic move. King d8. I like the way Abaraba played b4. That's actually a typical idea in this line. Kind of a secret strategic idea. You throw the positional stuff out the window, I guess, when you play this variation for white. I'm afraid I'm going to have to throw the positional stuff out the window here and take on d4, which looks undesirable. I'm not happy with the way I played this. I just can't afford to let him trade bishops. But Abaraba is not known for his blitz play, right? He's 1757. King, so to a7 or king c7? a7 seems safer, doesn't it? In the corner? Man, I have a bad feeling about this. very bad feeling about this. Maybe king c7 would have been better. Very good move, d5 now. Abaraba. Getting control of the white squares. It's very thematic. Yeah, there it is. Very dangerous situation for me. We've got to bust free. f5 undermining the center. It's a little too slow. Perhaps it's just too slow. Played a wonderful positional game here, focusing on the white squares. Not sure if f5 is fast enough. This move may not be good enough for white. I think, you know, he has to take on f5 there, for better or for worse. Does he have time for that, though? Bishop f6? Maybe he didn't have time. So I was just fast enough. This ending looks okay for me. Oh my god. And this is close. Slightly better for black, I guess. We might be able to win this. He's played flawlessly. Playing like God. We're a little bit better. Blundered. Well, nice game, Abraba. You came very, very close. Alright guys, that was thematic. Very scary. Very scary. I'm not satisfied with the way I played that. It was cutting it way too close. The Boriskolko bishop took him out in the end, but I just don't really I don't feel like I played that correctly. It got really scary. So he almost took me out on the white squares. Anyway, that's kind of a thematic game for that variation. Not objectively dangerous, but black has to be very, very careful. Not to slip up in that line, and I almost did. So anyway, we'll need to do a little bit of research to get up to speed in that variation. We will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central European Time, with another stream, Blitz and Classical Chess here. Thanks for joining me, and thanks to Jeroen. We'll be working on a decor in the interim between today's stream and tomorrow, so I hope you enjoy. And anyway, also check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. And last week I put up a review of some simul games. I'm not sure if we'll do that, the same thing, or something a little different this week. I might do a review of like some interesting games from the Blitz Classical stream, or maybe just a random instructionary lesson for the YouTube channel. Also, if you're interested in lessons, you can send me an email, videochesstrainer@gmail.com. And I guess the last thing is to mention I really appreciate those of you who have supported the channel via PayPal, and encourage everyone who can afford to do that to support just a little bit. Even like $5 a year would be awesome. And if you can't, then just be here and play some chess with us and hang out, and that will be support enough. So thanks everyone, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.